So a viewer just wrote in and asked me to do a video on some of the things that I think narcissists are afraid of and why I think narcissists are afraid of these things. So what we have to understand that narcissists are really driven by this need to run from their deep fractured sense of self and their shame. They don't want to touch it. They don't want to look at it. When we're dealing with someone who's a narcissist, there's tremendous shame at the core of their being. And they do everything and anything to run from that shame. And they'll go through all different types of ego defense mechanisms to project that shame onto you and to project, their brokenness onto you. So whatever they feel about themselves, they're actually going to accuse you of it, which is all because that they live in fear. When you're moving towards a more healthy state of mind, you are more willing to accept your shadow self. You are more willing to accept that you have flaws. You're more willing to say, listen, my father was an alcoholic. I'm the adult child of an alcoholic. I have been reactive. I suffer from abandonment issues. It's been a struggle for me to accept love and to be vulnerable with love. And I've made some mistakes. So the healthier you become emotionally, mentally, and psychologically, what ends up happening is you move into a state of acceptance of this idea that you're not perfect. And you don't recoil anymore because you're not perfect. There's a sense that it's okay. I'm a work in progress. And hopefully you get to a point where you realize that your environment has definitely affected you, and that just like a cell in a petri dish, when placed in a corrosive environment, the cell, does not evolve as in a healthy way because of the environment. It's the same thing with people. So hopefully you get to a point you realize, wait a minute, who I have become is very much a product of who I've been born to and my environment, right? And so that helps to eliminate shame. When you're dealing with someone who has narcissism, they can't get there. And it's really sad because if a narcissist could get there and they could investigate why they do what they do, then they wouldn't be a narcissist, right? And they wouldn't be out there projecting their freaking craziness onto everybody and, wreaking havoc everywhere they go, lying to people, destroying people's lives, and not having any empathy for what they do to people. It's just terrible. Lions and tigers and bears, oh my. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that I think narcissists are afraid of. And I can tell you that I was raised by a dad who has very high narcissistic traits. And for a very long time, I didn't know what I was dealing with. And I did not know that my father was really very fractured. The facade that he projected was one of steel. Nothing bothered him. He was a tough guy, and he would go toe to toe with anybody. I just always saw my dad as someone who was a strong person. And then over the years, when my father was confronted with change, when he had to change jobs, for instance, my father was completely depressed. I looked out my back window one day and he was in my backyard actually crying. My father was succumb with the fear and the insecurity of having to go to work at a company because he had owned his own business his whole life and he had security there. And, he didn't have to, kowtow to anybody. He didn't have to bend down to anybody. He didn't have to acquiesce to anybody. He was the tough guy. And suddenly he was like everyone else. So he wasn't special. So I can tell you that in my own life, I've watched this play out. So the first thing I want to talk about is how narcissists do not want to appear like everyone else. Narcissists fear they are like everyone else. Narcissists fear that people in their lives see them as ordinary. A narcissist feels good about feeling special. A narcissist, their sense of self is rooted in this idea that there's something special about them, that rules don't apply to them. There's just something about them that makes them different. They're misunderstood, whatever the case may be. I can tell you from my own personal experience that narcissists fear that they are like the average Joe Schmo. And they fear that you don't find something special about them. We have to remember that a narcissist's sense of self, the false self, is rooted in this idea that there's something unique about them. And they really need other people to mirror back this illusionary self to them. Otherwise, they can't survive. In my case, my mother constantly reinforced this idea that my father was awesome, even when he wasn't being awesome. So what I learned as I grew up was like, wow, it's like she runs around in life and she holds up a mirror. And the mirror is, you're amazing, you're wonderful, you're so special, you're so handsome, you're so great, and you're so terrific. It was all the time. It was actually sickening. I can tell you firsthand that narcissists need other people to believe that they think that they're special, because that is what they are holding on to inside their own head, that they actually are special. So another thing that I experienced in my own life is that narcissists fear the crowd turning on them. So when you think about the great lengths a narcissist goes to in a family to like smear campaign and triangulate, what just recently happened, well, not so recently, 2 years ago in my life, is that for the first time, my 3 children went up against their dad. They were a unified wall. They didn't agree with him on something. And he kicked them out of his home, told them to get out. And they have not spoken to their father since. It was the idea that he could not get my son to go against my daughter. And he couldn't get my one daughter to go against the other daughter. When my middle daughter confronted her father, he turned to my son and said, "What do you think about it?" And my son said, "She's right." And he blacked out. My ex-husband blacked out. According to my children, I was not there, but according to them, he blacked out. He went into a rage that the kids in his head turned on him. He wasn't able to manipulate them against one another, and that drove him mad. And so what the narcissist fears is that the people that he's been manipulating or she has been manipulating, they fear this crowd flipping and becoming a unified force in their truth, in the perception of this person. And so when the mask starts to slip, the fear is that the crowd is going to turn on the narcissist. And so the narcissist fears the crowd turning against them. Another thing that I think is very interesting is that a narcissist works very diligently to try to convince the people in their lives that they are responsible for nothing. So if you think about what they're going for, and this is the way I look at it. So what is the agenda of the narcissist? Oh, the agenda of the narcissist was to make me feel responsible for their actions or their inactions. So then what a narcissist really fears is you or me not taking accountability for their actions. So a narcissist fears that the people that they're trying to manipulate, they are not going to take responsibility for what the narcissist did, right? So what they want is for you to feel responsible for why, they're late or for why they lied, right? The narcissist wants you to take responsibility for it. And so what they fear is you saying, "No more, I'm not taking responsibility for this." Another thing that I find super, super interesting is that narcissists go to great lengths to convince you that you can trust them. So what a narcissist will fear is you distrusting them. Because the minute you call them out on their crap, right, it's like this whole ball of yarn begins to unravel. It's like, wait a minute, I don't trust you. So a narcissist wants you to trust them, right? They love bomb you, they trauma bond you, they make you believe that they are the person that you can trust, at least in the beginning, right? They're everything. No one's going to love you as much as them, You should never trust anybody more than you would trust them, and they have your best interest at heart. It's you and them against the world, right? So they create this idea that they are super, super trustworthy. And so if you think about it, because they go through great lengths to make you trust them, then that also means that they fear you not trusting them. So a narcissist is afraid of you acknowledging the fact that they are a narcissist. They are afraid of you distrusting them, because once you distrust them, a lot of things happen. A lot of things fall apart. You stop holding the mirror. You stop reflecting back to them. Oh, you're so awesome. You're so smart. And everybody's just jealous of you. Blah, 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 blah. You know, you stop reflecting that nonsense. And then you also stop being manipulatable. The narcissist can't manipulate you anymore, right? Once you no longer trust a narcissist, the gig is up, right? You are not going to reflect back this false image to them. You are not going to allow them to rage on you. You are not going to take responsibility for things that are not your fault. You are not going to isolate yourself anymore. I mean, once you don't trust the narcissist, the gig is up. Narcissists fear criticism big time. Now, they fear criticism from just about everybody, right? So if you're their main squeeze and you start criticizing them, that just means that, you know, you're not drinking the Kool-Aid, or as much as the Kool-Aid as they want you to drink. It means that, you know, they're not mirroring back to me this illusionary self, this false self, you know, to the extent that I need it to be mirrored back to me. You know, that's bad enough. But when someone outside of your circle, when a family member or a coworker criticizes the narcissist, what it means is that this narcissist has not been able to secure a sense of supply from these people in the workplace, let's say, or in the family setting. It means that the people aren't buying their nonsense. It means that they're not going to reflect back this false self to the narcissist, the false self the narcissist needs to believe in order to survive, right? Because otherwise they would implode. And so they're threatened by people who criticize them or are critical of them, because it means that they're not able to manipulate the people in their lives and secure from them what they need to not implode. I can tell you from personal experience, narcissists fear abandonment. Believe it or not, narcissists cannot make it on their own. It is like they absolutely need a partner that they can project on, that they can blame, and they can get this mirrored back sense of self from. Narcissists ultimately fear abandonment. When they fear you breaking up with them, they fear you discarding them, because what does that mean? It means that you don't see in them what they need people to see in them in order for them not to implode. It means without this mirror, they are left to deal with what's going on inside of them. When they are working off of the personality and the energies of someone else, it's like they're distracted from what's going on inside of them. And so I think it's really important that any of us who have been in a narcissistically abusive relationship understand that narcissists fear abandonment. When I was in a relationship with my ex-husband, who I think, in my own humble opinion, has some narcissistic traits for sure, definitely a passive-aggressive man, what I could not wrap my mind around was this idea that he would put me down, and he admitted to me, he actually said this out loud, that I thought that if I beat you down, you'd never leave me. When I finally started to put all the pieces together, I realized that that was because he feared abandonment. And because he feared what was lurking below the surface and he never worked it out, and he was never going to touch those wounds inside of him, right? He was stuck in this plane of, it can't be me, it has to be her. And I'm never going to look within and figure myself out and look at myself and admit that I have these flaws, but I don't want to be abandoned. So how can I, in that paradigm, right, in that mind construct, in that mindscape, what choice did he have but to think that it was appropriate? Well, although I think it's ridiculous because it defies logic when you really run it through a logical filter. If you want someone to be with you, you don't put them down, right? That's what narcissists do. But if you think about why, they're doing that because they fear abandonment. And they're doing that because they're not going to work out their stuff like a codependent will once a codependent understands that they're codependent. They're not going to work their stuff out like somebody who, even though has come from a traumatic background, and even though they know that they've got stuff to deal with, they're willing to look at it. They're not going to do that. So if that's their reality, and they're never going to look within, and they hate the truth, they fear being vulnerable, they hate being seen as average, and they need for other people to feel responsible for their deficits, in that mind construct, then they're going to be abusive because they can't not be abusive. They can't be vulnerable. They can't show you compassion. They can't have empathy for you. So in a relationship with a narcissist, you're going to experience nothing but abuse. And a lot of that abuse is fueled by the fear of abandonment, by the fear of truth, by the need to have someone mirror back to them this false version of themselves, because at their core, they are so shame-filled. And they're so lacking, and they're so full of fear, but they'll never touch it, right? And so because they never touch it, or they never want to touch it, they have to go through jump through all these ridiculous hoops and abuse other people just so they never have to touch those wounds. And as soon as you're sick of them, or they get bored of you, right? They're on to someone else. They discard you and they're on to something else. And once that person gets sick of them, or they get sick of that person, they try to hoover you back. Narcissists don't want to be self-reflective. They don't have the ability to be self-reflective. They don't want to be self-reflective. So that means they're constantly going to be looking for a person to abuse them, and that's what keeps them and their victims in these abuse cycles. There's no way. Narcissists just continue the abuse cycle with someone else. It's very, very sad. But the more that we understand victims of narcissistic abuse, the more we understand what motivates them, I think the greater chances we have of healing more deeply. So I hope that this video about, some of the things that narcissists are afraid of has, inspired you to dig a little deeper and maybe think about how this information applies to your own life. And hopefully it can help you move forward and heal more deeply. My name is Lisa A. Romano. I'm the Breakthrough Life Coach. I'm an expert in codependency and narcissistic abuse recovery. And I am the creator of the 12-week Breakthrough Coaching Program. And it's a program that helps people heal from narcissistic abuse and codependency. So essentially what we do is we take you from this place where you feel powerless, and through a 12-week program, through online classes, through daily interaction with me and my team on Facebook, you gain the insights and the tools, and you begin to reprogram your mind for health. You learn life skills that you didn't learn as a child because you were growing up in chaos. Not your fault, dear one, not your fault. And I'd be honored to be your guide in that online program. If you would like to read or listen to one of my books for free, you can do so by clicking one of the links below. Don't forget to check me out on Instagram, podcasts everywhere. And if you like, join my free Facebook group, an online support group on Facebook. Namaste, everyone. Until next time. Bye for now.